In a couple of my previous videos and my questions and answers, one of the really good questions I received was asking how do I handle high-level gameplay? And in parentheses, they specifically mention levels 11 and above. And I did give, of course, some thoughts, concerns, and my words of wisdom regarding that question. But I want to dive a lot deeper into that in today's video. I want to highlight 9 steps there, as you see on screen. We're going to talk through 9 topics, 9 bullet points. We're going to talk about one mind versus many. We're going to talk about high-level gameplay being more complex. Combat certainly takes a lot longer. Gameplay is going to feel very world level versus shrunken down at the road level. The PCs are going to be able to say no. Magic is certainly a thing to consider at high level. You're going to deal with bloated numbers. The game can feel at high levels of gameplay. Remember, we're talking about levels 11, the back half, levels 11 and above. Very trivial, and sometimes it feels like a lot more black and white at times. Very trivial, or it can just go straight to over the top, exaggerated, deadly. And finally, we'll talk about how the players are certainly more invested at that point. And with each of these, there's no particular order here. It's just how I laid them out when I was thinking through them. There's no particular order of importance, which one you need to lean into more. These are all just various consideration points that might help smooth out your high-level gameplay. All right? Of course, we will start at the top. One mind versus many. What do I mean by this? The characters at high level, your level 11, 12, 13 characters are more complex. There's a lot more moving parts. They have a lot more actions. Your rogue has a lot of options to use their bonus actions for. Your wizard isn't just looking at a couple of spell cards or a single piece of paper. They're now flipping through the book when they sleep and finish a long rest, and they have a lot of ways: utility, control, straight up evocation, nuke everything damage. There's just a lot of ways that they might be able to overcome various challenges and obstacles. And what ends up happening is you have all these moving parts and the complexity of every character, especially the players in your group that really invest a lot of time and energy into this. And they've sort of gone through the various websites and forums, and they've asked for advice on how to best play a high-level barbarian and so on. They're going to really know the ins and outs of their character. They're going to know, and even for the newer players that don't invest a lot of out-of-game time into their characters, they're just becoming more familiar. They just understand the way their characters are going to work. So you're going to have a situation where you're a single person as a dungeon master, and you have many players. I have 9 to 10 people at my table, all against me in combat. And yes, we're trying to have a shared experience of fun and entertainment, so I don't always want to make it as though it's always DM versus players. I try and design all of my story, worlds, and campaigns very player-centric. But whatever idea, whatever cool, clever thing I come up with, my players not only have more tools at their disposal, it's whatever puzzle is in my mind versus the intelligence of 10 real-life people. So not only do you want to embrace that fact, or at least understand that that's a thing, embrace it, accept it. Stop competing. You shouldn't be doing this anyway, but especially at high level, don't continue to try and outgun 10 characters, 5 characters, however many you have, that have all these moving parts. They're going to beat you. And now they have the tools to do so. Allow that to happen. Okay? So that's just one thing that you want to look into and consider. The game is more complex. It is going to be tougher for new players and new DMs. And I think a lot of this leans more into if you decide to start an adventure or a campaign at high level. Don't create, as a new DM, you're excited. Don't create a new world and tell everyone they get to start at level 12. There's a lot of moving parts, and if you don't have the experience of wrangling through your game and understanding the snowball effect of such things, understanding the nuances of CR, the long rest mechanic, the sort of by design number of encounters per day, the resources that, if you haven't really delved into the player's handbook yet, You're going to be shocked a little bit when your wizard starts pulling out level 5, 6, 7, 8 spells. You may have overlooked that you thought that walled city was a massive obstacle, but when your PCs have flight and greater invisibility and various things like this, and your rogue has all these bonus actions, all of a sudden you thought you had them trapped. They've disengaged, they've moved, they've teleported, they've misty stepped, they've done, and they still get to do something again. And now your fighter's going to action surge. So the game just gets more complex. It gets more complex from your end because you have to now accommodate these things, which is causing you as a dungeon master to kind of prepare more angles and more directions to provide entertainment and challenge. But your players are certainly, the characters in your world are going to be more complex. So just be careful with starting. I strongly recommend against it, but even be careful with, as new DMs and new players, if your campaign starts to run, even if you began at low level, if you start to get into those higher tiers of gameplay, maybe think about calling it and restarting another game, okay? Combat takes a lot longer. This one is relatively self-explanatory. It just simply does. In one round, low level, level 1, fighter, you're up. Roll the hit. Yeah, who do you want to attack? The orc? Okay, cool. Roll. EC 11. Okay, that misses. You can just tell. I mean, you were really close, but it just kind of, your mace just rebounds off of the thickened leather and hide of this orc. So you miss. You're done. Oh, you want to move? Okay, yeah, go ahead. Just move your guy 20 feet. Okay, you're up. Wizard, go. What do you want to do? Okay, magic missile. Cool. All right. Roll damage. Okay, cool. I take 12. Okay, you're good. Rogue, you're up. That's 3 players. Fast forward to level 14. Fighter, you're up. Oh, you want to do this? Oh, you're a battle master. You've got this tactic. Okay, well, you want to know the situation here? Okay, well, you can move there. Oh, you activate that magic item. All right, go ahead and do that. Okay, all right, and then go ahead and roll and make your second. Oh, do you want to move and maybe attack someone else? Okay, well, you drop him. Go ahead and move. Make another attack. Okay, go ahead. Oh, you've got 3 more attacks. All right, do that. Okay, fighter, you're done. Wizard. Oh, sorry, wait, what? Action surge? Okay, do that all again. Combat takes longer. Prepare and plan for that, especially being that 5th edition is sort of designed in the CR system, which is wonky. I'll create a video on this. Is designed around that 5 to 8 encounters per day. At high level, understand and respect. So keep intensity high. Don't allow sort of analysis paralysis, whatever you want to call it, to happen with your players. Keep everyone invested very quickly off turn so that they know the situation. Because if you now have to explain to each player on each initiative count the situation of the battle and what's going on, and then you need to give them 50 seconds to a minute to think, one round is going to take you 15 minutes. And it's going to just bog down your pacing, okay? So combat takes a lot longer. That's just obvious. It's no different than a video game where they give you 4 buttons to push, but as you go through the game, many, many hours in, and your character gets more powerful, your talent tree gets a lot longer, right? You have a lot more buttons to push and consider. Gameplay is now world level versus road level. Now, what I mean by this is you're dealing with nations and kingdoms and the downfall of factions, perhaps the downfall of a faction because of the actions of your PCs. They are now attacking entire thieves guilds, not just a lone bandit on the side of the road. Road level means, the biggest that you'll see is what's happening at that one village, in that one tavern, and go and clear out those one single bit of caves that are over in the east 7 miles away. World level, you're teleporting from city to city. You have all the resources in play. You're maybe flown into a new location with a dragon, right? So things are just a lot more, travel is much faster, whether through helms of teleportation, magic items, or your wizard's own spell casting. The resources and the NPCs they meet, they now have an entire druidic faction, a group of druids that allow the PC's use of various groves to move about the world. So gameplay is much bigger. Consider the consequences of your PC's actions when they're dealing on a global level. When the PCs don't want to help a beaten and battered NPC that they find on the side of the road at level 1 or 2, the ramifications of that is going to stay very local. That one NPC may die. Sure, you can kind of brainstorm and sort of flow chart out the consequences of that 30 sessions from now. But at the low level, you don't make the consequences that big because your PCs don't have the resources to. If this guy needs a remove curse and your PCs are level 1, there's not much they can do. It's too dangerous to escort. They can't cast remove curse. They're not high enough level. And it's also too dangerous to sort of take him on as baggage. They don't even have mounts, so they're not like throwing him in the back of the wagon. They're level 1. So it may just be unwieldy for them and not realistic or efficient for them to take this guy on, walk with him for 20 miles, hoping that they're going to run into a temple where there's a high priest capable of remove curse. So they may just give the guy food and water, maybe spend an evening with him and a long rest, talk with him, comfort him the best they can. But ultimately, if this guy's going to succumb to the curse, he's going to die, or, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So when you have that sort of road, very narrow level, that's the consequence. It's just the one NPC. But at world level, where they have the means to teleport this guy, or, port in someone, a priest, or the cleric themselves in your group has that capability, the actions and the consequences of the things, more importantly, the choices they don't make, have much more global impact. So when you create that NPC, consider that that NPC that they didn't remove curse on and help may be tied into the bloodline of the local emperor, which now influences the curse that the group chose not to look into, which is starting to affect an entire nation as the darkness seeps and creeps along the entire 1,000-mile region to the west. So just think and realize how large gameplay is at this point, the scope of your game. This is a big one. The PCs can say no. They have the tools, they have the resources in place. So understand that when you give them a certain adventure hook, if I was to back up at low level, when there is a job board or they meet the quest giver, right? You want to bring the group together. They all meet at a tavern and a note is thrown on the table, which simply says, meet this dwarven champion here. The dwarves have the faction of dwarves in the nearby castle up on the hill has jobs for the PCs. The PCs don't have the power and the resources to just, we're not doing this. We're not interested. We have our own agenda. We have our own world. The other thing too is you're just starting out the game. So the players have a sort of understanding that you as the DM is just trying to get the ball rolling. You're just trying to get some adventures going. So they're going to latch onto that. Okay. That's the job. He says he wants us to go to the mines and clear out and figure out what the terror is in the depths. We're going to clear that out because he said so. We don't have the resources or the power to say no. At high level gameplay, they don't need all those resources anymore. They don't need someone to bribe them with horses because your wizard can teleport the group. They've got magic. They don't need bridge builders and they don't need siege weapons and some faction that's promising to tear down the wall because the wizard just says, guys, we're not going to go down that quest line and we're not going to add those favors and we're not going to add all these side quests to our current journal because I'm just going to fly us over the wall. Rogue, just sneak in and find. We don't need recon people anymore, right? Your PCs, it's kind of think of it as when you are that skilled as a carpenter and you have all the tools you need, you don't need as much help. Help is always beneficial, but you don't need as much help in building the house anymore. When you can plumb, is that what it's called? When you're your own plumber and electrician, you don't need to call those people in to fix things. So just understand that your PCs can and will, and you need to give them that freedom at high level to say no to one of your quests. They have other things they could be doing. That's probably the biggest statement I can make. Versus level 1, this is what you're doing. Tell me otherwise. Magic is certainly going to be a thing. This is a big one here. You have to wrangle this, at your table yourself. And of course, it depends on the scale of magic in your world. Is it grimdark, where the best thing that you're ever going to see at level 18 is a steel sword, finally? You're no longer using foam swords or wood or bone. Very Dark Sun-esque. Or is it real high fantasy? You know, in a world that's very high fantasy, like think of Eberron or something like this, or more magic at the low level. I know that it talks about Eberron being magic is low level, but it's very horizontal, right? It's everywhere. It permeates all of society versus it isn't saying that Eberron is all about level 8 spells being slung everywhere. But the availability of technology, right? Magic items, spells, flying ships, money, the amount of, currency that they have that they can sling about. They can hire people to do the dirty work for them. They've got wizards that are capable of teleporting them. They've got legendary items at this point. So you have to just consider, if you look at gameplay as world level at this point, and the freedom of the PCs to now have more tools and say no to you, Magic just takes everything we've already talked about and ramps it up another level. Bloated numbers. This one's very quick. Everything is just bigger. There's more hit points to deal with. Higher AC. Crits just mean a lot more at that point. You're rolling a lot more dice. This kind of leads into the whole combat takes a lot longer. I'm not just rolling a d4. d4 plus 3. I did 7. Now I'm rolling 4d4, and then hold on. I've got another 5d6 for smite, and then 1 second. I'm going to add my 2d6. Actually, hold on. Let me use different color dice. Let's separate. Okay. He dealt 13 fire, and that you get it. Right? You're just grabbing more stuff. There's more shit on the table. You'll notice it. Okay, so everything is just bloated and bigger. That's why video games like WoW and stuff have this item squish. Eventually, the numbers flashing all over the screen just get too unwieldy, and numbers just get too big, and you lose sort of that sense of scale a little bit when the and that's kind of leaning back into Magic as a thing. The verticality. It's almost like a game that all of a sudden, everyone in your world now has flying mounts. Did you pay attention to the skyscraper high-level scale of things? Because now your PCs can go to that 500-foot peak and see what's in that cave up there. Pay attention to just everything is bigger and more bloated. This one is, it doesn't apply at all tables, but I feel like with me, it can be very, in combat especially, when my PCs are real high level, I underestimated, going back to point one of one mind versus many, I underestimated how clever a large group of my players are pretty damn savvy. They're just very intelligent players, and 80% of my table has been doing this for 25, 30 years, as long as I have. So they're pretty savvy. I oftentimes will underestimate the CR, and because they have so many tools, they just work well together and they overcome my challenge. So things can feel, oh, I forgot you guys could fly. I forgot you guys could I forgot you had that legendary item. I don't want to start rust monstering everything and taking it away. But what can happen is either things can feel super simple, or when I really want to challenge them, it gets over the top. And all of a sudden the consequence for failure, when you roll a 1 on that acrobatics check, you just die at this point. Because damage is trivial at level 17. When you have a life cleric at level 17, it doesn't matter that you do 47 damage in one blow. Your barbarian has 219 hit points. They have a auto-activating potion in there. What is the helmet with the 2 cans of beer? The tubes? They have one of those with a healing potion in each side. So either it feels trivial, like, okay, cool, I stepped in the fire. All right, how much do I take? 8d6? Cool. Well, I have resist fire, and I'm a tiefling, so I'm going to half and half. Great. Where in hell we went through the portal of fire? I took 9 damage. I got you. Just do what you got to do. I got you. You have Death Ward on. You get it. So the extreme of that goes into the deadly, where you go into the portal of fire. 20d6 times 8. You take 419 damage. So just be careful with you lose a little bit of that gray area of it's too easy, but be careful, because when you decide to make it hard and really challenging for level 15s, it gets TPK level challenging. So understand and be careful of that. And the last one kind of leans into the one we just talked about with be careful with TPK and too difficult. Players are now invested in the world and their characters. When you kill a character, it's a big deal now. Yes, at high level, the resources are in play. That resurrection, raise dead, coming back is a thing. Whether they can do it themselves because there's a cleric among the group, or they just simply have, they've done enough jobs for the local religion or the big religion in your world that their high priests have promised them 3 resurrections, whatever. So, yes, they can come back easier, but when you kill a player, it stings a lot more. They're not as easily, they're not able to come back to the table. I always allow my players, if they die, to come back at whatever level the group is at. I don't have a bunch of level 17s rolling around and then tell you when you die, you have to make a level 1. But the other thing to consider there is the second point. It's more complex. Yes, they understand high-level gameplay because they just played that character for 17 levels, but when they come back with a new character and they start at level 17, they haven't played that particular character yet. And if they drastically change, they were a level 17 barbarian and now they're going level 17 wizard, they've got a lot of paper, stuff on their sheet that they have to deal with. So they're going to be a lot slower in their actions because they're just figuring out all these buttons now. That, there's 74 buttons that just popped up on their level 17. So just understand, doesn't mean you don't kill them. You still need to figure out how to play into your threats, which lean into the gameplay as world level. The consequences of the things that they don't do matter that much more. But respect that the players are more invested in their characters, are going to be more attached to them. They're going to be more reluctant and resistant, and it's just going to hurt more and staying in the group more. But also, they're invested in the world a lot more as well. That particular character's name and their reputation has spread throughout the world. The factions know who these people are at this point. So when the things sort of start over, or you imprison someone and you kind of have them removed for 2 or 3 sessions, that has a lot more global impact than it otherwise would have. No one knew who the hell you were outside of the bartender when you're level 1 and 2. But now the whole world knows that name. So just respect and understand that the players are more invested, and if anything, maybe at that point, while you do want to still challenge them, kind of start to lean a little more in favor of the players. Your players are starting to win at high level, and that's kind of how I'm going to start to leave the video. Your players are starting to win at that level. If they've been rewarded with having all these cool parts to their character and all these magic items and all this influence in the world because they've trudged through your shit for 16 levels, they're starting to win. Let them win. Now, that doesn't mean you can't end it with some really global world-ending thing where Vecna comes out and annihilates the group, in some epic battle, or your PCs knew the culmination of everything was eventually they're going to work their way to hell, and they're going to have to try and clean out the second and third plane of the abyss, or this or that. Show them the consequences of that and say, yes, you guys can take out a pit fiend. It's not a problem. You can kill a Baelor. But now there's a legion of them. All underneath, that one big badass named Pit Fiend, or they're all under Asmodeus. Now this avatar of this god is intervening. There's consequences for that, and you can kind of end it as either a retirement thing or you guys all go out with a bang, Valhalla style. But don't just keep taking things away from them because you didn't consider all these other points. And I think that's the essence of the video. I'm just giving you some things to spin the wheels on and think about. Those are sort of my experiences, and I'm sure there's more bullet points. There's things I've missed that you can comment on, but for the 9 that I thought of very quickly, and they all interweave with one another, each of these can have a different scale depending on if we're talking about level 20 characters versus level 13 characters. Because once you start unlocking the level 14 traits, level 17, level 20 traits, and especially start unlocking level 5 spells versus level 8 spells, 2 different things if you look at and you read through them. So there it is. I hope this helped someone out there. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you guys soon.